where do we split off? Where do we go from HRT, TRT to into the world of superhuman or super physiological? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, bodybuilders don't give two shits about longevity, that's for sure.
Right. It's all performance.
It's all performance. Yeah, there comes a point though. I think most guys start to shift as they get older. They're like, all right, now when you're young, you're less aware of your mortality, and you get to a point where you become more aware of it. I'm 51 now. I mean, it's I'm lived 2/3 of my life, really,
Yeah.
statistically speaking.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the 15th episode of the Rise 41 podcast. I'm your host, Gonzalo Herrero, and today I have the privilege of welcoming Big Paul, the authority behind YouTube's Anabolic Building channel, where he cuts through all the online nonsense about enhanced bodybuilding, training, PEDs, growth hormone, insulin, nutrition, and all other aspects of bodybuilding to bring you the truth about all of it from the world of amateur and pro bodybuilder. And with that introduction, welcome, Paul. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
What's going on, Gonzalo?
Just trying to get this done, man, and learn more from you, sir.
Yeah, the YouTube thing's been sort of surreal. There's a funny story how that all got started. I've been training people off and on since college, honestly. I started off as a personal trainer and a nutritionalist when I was in college. I think 19, I started studying for my certifications. Got my certification both. I don't even remember what it was in, but I worked at a gym for 5 years, and I was personal training. I really got into doing diets for people. That was kind of my thing. And I fell in love with bodybuilding. Before that, so I was just a gym bro bodybuilder. But anyway, I'd off and on have been training people on the side, and people were constantly asking me questions at the gym. And my training partner is like, man, it's like interrupting our workout. You just need to make some videos and put them up on YouTube and just tell people to go watch the videos.
Yeah, especially if they're the same question over and over, sure.
Yeah, so like the whole thing just sort of happened by accident. And I put videos up. I made steroid profile videos first, and I probably need to go back and redo them again. Some of them are a little off, and they were pretty crappy, my first videos I put up.
We learn as we go.
Yeah, we learn as we go. It's just like anything else. But I was like shocked as I went back and looked at them, and like, these things are getting thousands of views. Maybe I should do more of this. So I started thinking, like, I had, like, there was so many things I thought that needed to be made and nobody else was doing it. Like maybe Vigorous Steve was the only other guy I saw at the time that was doing anything. And I started making stuff that I wanted to see. Honestly, that was kind of where I saw it. And then it caught Steve's eye early on, and Steve had me on his show. Like I hadn't had my channel up for very long, and then I just exploded after that. But that's kind of how the whole thing got going. I mean, I've been around for a long time. I just, didn't have any social media fame until then.
Right. So,
honestly, it caught me.
Knowledge
it caught me off guard.
The channel, yeah.
It honestly caught me off guard. I did not expect to, like, within a couple of years. I mean, I had millions of views on my YouTube channel, and my Instagram gets, I don't know, 5-6 million views a month on Instagram. It's really surreal, to be honest with you. And like, I think people recognize me when I go places now, which is really weird because I'm an introvert.
So you're like YouTube famous now.
Yeah, in a niche community, right?
Right.
It's the gym bro culture, but like I can't walk into a gym without somebody recognizing me. It makes it really hard to work out now.
Yeah, I imagine. Like, is your home gym like all set up? Is that your?
I go to
an extrovert. Do you prefer being around people?
I am an extroverted introvert, I guess I would say. I can socialize when I need to, but I prefer my alone time. I'm a typical nerd, man. I don't like going to parties. I don't like going and
Yeah.
hanging out at the bar. I'd rather be at home reading a book or watching a show or playing video games or whatever. I mean, that's my kind of way I'd rather spend a Saturday night.
You absolutely remind me of so many of my friends who say they have like this meter of people. And when the meter's topped off,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yeah, what do
It's
they
time.
say that extroverts gain energy from being around people?
Yes,
Introverts take energy to be around people. So that I'm
absolutely.
definitely in the latter column. I prefer being at home doing my thing. But yeah, the gym's really weird now. It's like a live Q&A session when I go to the gym. I can't do a workout. I, I try to
You're
be
trying to like
nice.
put on weight effort, like lift something, deadlift, and you're like, I'm focused guy. And can I ask you something?
Yeah, and I try to be nice about it. I'll just let people know, hey, I got to get my set in. We can talk afterwards, but I try to be a decent, not be a dick about it. But
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I wanted to tell the audience, so how I found you is as I've gone down my own personal exploration of the space, and I'm very much now into longevity, biohacking, optimization, which we spoke about a little bit before.
mhm.
And and there's definitely, like we talked about, some overlap between
Yeah,
that
100%.
human longevity biooptimization community as well as the raw gym culture, bodybuilding culture, because it's about ultimately like pushing those limits, one aiming for longevity, the other one aiming more for performance, it seems. And then there's that somewhere in there, there's that split, right? Where you start training a certain way with certain things in mind for longevity versus, this is where we get into that conversation about insulin control, hormone balance, nutrition, and what does that look like as you try to get stronger, bigger, better? Where do we split off? Where do we go from HRT, TRT to into the world of suprahuman or supraphysiological? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, bodybuilders don't give two shits about longevity. That's for sure.
Right. It's all performance.
It's all performance. Yeah, there comes a point though. I think most guys start to shift as they get older. They're like, all right, now, you when you're young, you're less aware of your mortality,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you get to a point where you become more aware of it. I'm 51 now. I mean, it's I'm lived 2/3 of my life, really,
Yeah.
statistically speaking.
Hmm.
You start thinking about it, and then also there is also the question of longevity versus vitality. You can live a long time, but if you're cripple or sick, it
Right.
doesn't really matter. I don't know. I think that's sort of the quality of life. I think for me, at least for me, is more important than length. I'm not saying that I want to rush to the grave earlier,
Of course. Of course. But
but
there
it's
is a
some.
balance. You're right.
Yeah, no,
It
there is a
reminds me.
balance.
It reminds me of that conversation about, let's say, human growth hormone and IGF levels and old age. So maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves in this conversation, but the idea of like maybe growth hormone keeps you younger, feeling, looking, but as far as life extension, IGF-1 high levels tends to correlate with not a long life. So how does that work?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the caveat. Um, Higher growth hormone. Depending on, I think IGF-1 a lot of times is with the growth hormone is diet. If you're in a calorie deficit, I've seen IGF-1 stay low while guys are on growth hormone. But certainly increased IGF-1, you're going to have increased risk of cancer, right? So
Right. If it's
and
there,
I
it'll feed it, right?
right,
That's
yeah, it's
the
not going to cause cancer, but
right.
it's going to accelerate the growth of it. And I think ultimately that's probably, and we're accelerating cellular turnover, and we know that there's just a certain amount of times that can happen before you're worn out. Every time the cells are replicated, there's always a chance of genes getting screwed up, right? So we we are taking a chance with doing that. Now, I would say looking at a guy like Sylvester Stallone, he's struck the balance clearly. That's a guy that's using PEDs, and he's almost 80
Right.
years old.
Right.
Still looks fantastic, but I think it's moderation. And look, it's like the way I look at it, like bodybuilding is like race car driving. It comes with inherent risk, but there are things that you can do to mitigate those risks. There's safety precautions you can take. There's things you can do, but ultimately you are taking a risk, and it's just like being a professional football player. They just don't live
Right.
as long as everybody
Right.
else,
Right.
right? I
So,
think the average lifespan of an NFL player is somewhere around 60 years.
oh, is it? I
Yeah, it's
didn't
pretty
know it was
low.
quite that low. Oh,
Yeah. I think I read somewhere it was in the high 50s, like late or low 60s, high 50s. It
I
also
mean,
depends on the position. And a lot of it
sure.
is, we know a lot of it's not just the hormones, it's corresponds to body mass. You don't see any 70-year-old, 270-pound jacked guys walking around.
True.
You just
Other than
don't.
Stallone.
I mean, he's still small though, but I'd say he's probably 185, 190 pounds. He's just fit. Right. Yeah. So I would say, like, from the transition after bodybuilding, like for me, at some point, I probably would want to downsize. There does seem to be there is a definite correlation between BMI, whether it's muscle or not, and longevity. So if I wanted to make it to 80 or 85 or 90, probably walking around at 260, 270 pounds isn't smart.
So is the thing, since you're carrying all this muscle, it's that extra workload to your
I mean, your
cardiovascular
heart still has to
system.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's more food, more mTOR, more IGF-1, all these things that are great for growth, but not great for longevity.
Gotcha. Yet again,
It's
that performance versus longevity divergence, if you will.
right. And, bodybuilders are the original biohackers, as we talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
absolutely.
And it's not just how to grow. A lot of times bodybuilders are looking for performance in other areas. A lot of guys end up transitioning into business, cognitive enhancement, um, sleep, rest, recovery. I mean, there's just a bunch of different things. Some people get carried away with it. They're willing to do anything. There's always people that do extremes. But I would say at some point, like for me, I would like to compete maybe one more time as a pro,
Okay.
and then I would shift more into a longevity and vitality mindset. It's sort of walking a balance. I would say probably I would want to reduce my body weight, probably down closer to 200 pounds.
Gotcha. If you don't mind me asking, how tall are you?
Hair under 6'2", 6'1" and three
Okay. All
quarters.
right. So just to have an idea of the proportions, that we're talking about.
Yeah, and
So,
like when I was 250 on stage this past year. Just walking around weight, I'm like 260, 270, something like that.
wow, you're a big dude. Like the
Yeah,
nickname
yeah,
fits.
yeah. I mean, I think people are surprised when they see me in person. I always hear that, like, wow, you're way bigger than I thought. It's the height.
Uh,
I mean,
yeah, I can imagine. I'm only 5'8", so
there are
I can
definitely dudes
imagine.
bigger than me, but it's once again, there's not many guys my size walking around at 80 years old. Probably none.
But yeah, yeah. I guess that there's a lot to be said about that. So kind of on this theme, you have quite a few videos that talk about harm reduction, how to do this right, or how to understand the risks. If you go this far, this is what can happen. These are things you can do to mitigate and so forth. Are there any general guidelines for, say, somebody who's considering going into maybe that TRT plus, maybe a little further into enhancement? Any general guidelines or tips that you might
Yeah,
share?
I mean, we look at when you start taking more PEDs, we look at things that increase risk. Really, the biggest risk with PEDs is ultimately cardiovascular health. You'll see it with guys, especially older bodybuilders. Cardiovascular health and kidneys, and they're both sort of interrelated. As blood pressure rises and you have chronic blood pressure for years and years, you end up blowing out the the glomeruli of the filtration system of the kidneys, and end up with kidney disease. And so a lot of it really just boils down to managing your lipids, managing your blood pressure, managing there's always a increase of thickness in the blood from, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and red blood cell count increasing from taking these drugs. Everybody's going to have some elevation of that. And I think it's like multifactorial. It's the combination of all the above. It's the thicker blood, lack of cardio, increased body weight, increased blood pressure. Guys a lot of times are pounding food to get bigger, and a lot of times have running high blood sugar. All these factors increase risk of heart attacks, strokes, blockages. A lot of guys have poor lipids, especially guys that are eating higher fat diets, and PEDs are going to cause lipid skewing on top of it. So, and I don't necessarily have a problem with higher fat diets. But if you're using PEDs, it's something to consider that you're already going to have lipid skewing on top of it. So you have to more carefully manage your lipids. I would say compound choices are a big factor in being safe. If you wanted to go TRT plus, most of the bad stuff comes from taking orals. You look at it, even Anavar, which is quote unquote safe, been considered safe, you still see really bad lipid skewing with Anavar. While, you'll see some elevation in liver enzymes, the liver is pretty resilient. Generally, I've seen most people be able to, even when liver enzymes get high, completely be able to reverse that. But having a 5 HDL probably isn't great for cardiovascular disease.
Right. And I was going to say, I don't think I've ever heard of a bodybuilder passing away because of a liver issue.
No, I've
seems
never
to
not.
sure. Okay.
Well,
Is that accurate?
yeah, I mean, I know there was one guy that passed away, and I remember that he had a tumor in his liver, but it's not what caused his death. But no, generally, when you hear bodybuilders passing away, it's heart attacks, strokes,
Right.
blood
It's
clots.
cardiovascular.
Blood clots are another big thing. Guys get because their blood gets thick. And then carrying all that extra weight, getting dehydrated for a bodybuilding show while being on PEDs with high red blood cell counts. And really, you think about it, powerlifters and strongmen, you don't hear of them often passing away from.
Interesting, because it is strength sports also.
Yeah, it's strength sports. They are taking the same PEDs. They're eating a much worse diet, but I speculate that it's the contest prep and all the crazy crap you do on contest prep is where a lot of the damage comes. Getting dehydrated at the end, being, doing hours and hours of cardio, being in a calorie deficit. All this sets up a high stress environment.
Right. I was going to say these are stressors on top of you're already kind of redlining the engine with your PEDs and through training.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's once again just speculation, but I would say just for like the average guy that wants to be in shape for summer, have the Hollywood body, I would stick with just mostly I would stick with the bioidentical compounds, HGH, and test, maybe running them a little bit higher. And if you wanted to add in an anabolic, something that's going to be mild and well tolerated, like Primobolan or Masteron, which seem to be very well tolerated and have a very low side effect profile. And if you stick with those fundamentals, and if you keep track of your lipids, keep track of your blood pressure while you're on, I think if you do those things, that it's really pretty low risk.
Gotcha. At that point, you're not following the analogy, like revving the engine to 9,000 RPM all the time, as you described before. Nor do you have the stressors of contest prep, which, by the way, can you, for the non-initiated, can you give a quick summary description of what that process is for a bodybuilder when you go to competition?
It is 16 weeks of hell.
Okay.
No, really, it's the last month that sucks.
It is.
Your body fat. Everybody has a body fat set point of and where their body can handle, basically homeostatic point. I think for me, like I can maintain 10 to 12% body fat pretty easily year round. But getting down to 5% body fat takes all sorts of tricks.
Okay.
Your body does
And
not want to be 5% body fat.
I was going to ask you, so it takes a lot of effort, a lot of discipline. And my assumption is because your body doesn't want to be there, you'll start getting sides because of hormonal imbalances, maybe stuff like that.
Hormones, and then you have to do some pharmacological tricks to get that lean.
Gotcha.
Like I don't think my body would. I don't think it matter what I would do naturally. I don't think I could get down to 5% body fat. I think maybe 7 or 8. But getting down to 5% body fat, you have to do crazy shit like crushing your estrogen, taking your estrogen down to nothing. There'll be people that will argue and say that doesn't work, that estrogen helps burn fat. Every single bodybuilder I know going into a show buries their estrogen.
Gotcha.
And that's just how it goes. Taking fat burners like clenbuterol is very common. Going into shows using stimulants like ephedrine is very common. Going into shows, using diuretics going into shows
Right.
is very
So
common.
again, a lot of redlining stuff, things that
Yeah,
are pushing the envelope in multiple factors all simultaneously.
yeah. Not only do you have to be lean going into a show, you also have to be dry, as the bodybuilding community calls it, which is ridding yourself of any subcutaneous water on top of it. So,
So
I
this
mean,
is where you hear like no water 24 hours before a show or very little, that kind of
yeah, I mean,
practice.
like what I'll do, I don't completely cut water out because I think that's a recipe for kidney failure.
Yes.
Um, what I'll do is I'll do water loading going into the show where I'll drink 2 gallons for a couple weeks leading up into 10 days or so leading up into, and then the last 48 hours, I'll cut it down to a half a gallon per day. And so what happens there is your aldosterone will regulate to that 2 gallons that you are drinking. And then when you cut it down, you've got about a 48-hour window before aldosterone catches back up. And you still pee like you're drinking 2 gallons, but you're drinking a half a gallon. And to be honest with you, half a gallon is probably what the normal person
Drinks in a day.
drinks.
Right.
That's eight
So
ounce glass water.
so this is something that, again, for those who are new to this or trying to see this as a bodybuilding 101, if you're considering bodybuilding, understand what it involves. When people see these pictures of competitors on stage, top level competitors, people have to understand that that's the work of 16 weeks, 20 weeks of training for one day, literally
Yeah.
one day, where everything has been set and timed and perfected to show that physique one day, right? Basically.
Yeah, there's peaking protocols. And I mean, you only look like that a couple days out of the year.
Right.
I mean, really.
Right.
I mean, and it's unsustainable. So like guys that think you can walk around, like young guys think that you can walk around and look like that
Yeah. All the
365
time.
days a year. It's impossible. You
I'll
can't.
be the next
You can be
C-bum. I don't.
lean. Anybody can be lean. Anybody can be big, but being big and lean is hard as hell.
Right. And by lean, you're talking sub 10%, like,
Yeah,
like,
like 5. You to step
yeah.
on stage, on a DEXA scan, which is what I usually use with my clients, is somewhere around high 5s, low 6s. And essentially at that point, I mean, your brain is all fat. So essentially at that point, really, there's zero subcutaneous fat left.
Right. It's
Uh,
all literally in your brain.
it's
That's
it's
all that's left.
brain and maybe a little bit around your organs. You might have a little bit of visceral fat left. I've even seen guys have zero visceral fat before.
Wow. That's remarkable to say the
I
least.
had, I'll tell you a story. I let myself go in my 30s. I got pretty fat for a while, and I wasn't doing bodybuilding. Then I was just focused on being a CEO at that point in my life.
Gotcha.
And I ended up with
Career first.
I'm diabetic,
Okay.
and I wasn't doing a very good job of managing my diabetes. And I had accumulated a fatty strip on my liver. and
Hmm.
my doctor told me that it was permanent. I will tell you, my first contest prep back, that fatty strip completely went away. So
Really?
that's how lean you get on contest
Right.
prep.
Like literally your body screams for holding any fat, anything at all,
Yeah,
you
you
know?
get to the point where it takes everything, every single resource. And he told me, he's like, I've never seen that before.
Oh, okay. So it's that extreme,
Yeah, and
again.
it was permanent too. It's been gone. It
Oh,
hasn't come
wow.
back.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, I assume that's a good thing.
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good
that's,
thing, right?
it was
One
an
positive that came
inadvertent
from it.
positive effect. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. So, do you believe that whole? I've heard it said where competitors say that they have two or three preps that in their lifetime that give you that your optimal shape. Is that a real thing, or is it achievable over time, repeatable?
I think it depends on how extreme you get with your prep.
Hmm.
I think the guys that say that probably have gotten very extreme with their preps, and there's a fine line to walk. You want to push it up to the edge, but not over the edge. I've tried to walk that line. Obviously, at my age, there's only so far you can take it, but I feel like I've gotten better every time I've gotten on stage.
Okay. So you have refined your process. You learn more about yourself, how you feel, and what to
Yeah,
do.
and I think part of it is too, like, not letting, like, a lot of guys let themselves go after shows. They just go on food benders and just end up getting fat. And if you stay lean year round, like, like, I never really get much more than 10-12% body fat. It's, I'm always within 15 or 20 pounds of stage weight, and dropping 15 pounds isn't that big of a deal.
Right. When you see these extreme guys who allow themselves to like bulk, an extra 30,
Yep.
40, 50
I think that's where
pounds
the
and
mistake happens.
well,
If you have to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds in 16 weeks, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, you can do the math on it. I mean, if you have to lose 50 pounds, I mean, it's going to be close to 3 pounds a week. That's a 3,000 calorie a day net negative energy balance that you have to run.
and I assume that will start eating
Or
to muscle
1,500.
too.
Sorry, 1,500.
But
My
still,
my math is off. 1,500. But still,
yeah.
I mean, I've 1 to 2 pounds a week, I think, is probably the reasonable rate of fat loss, even with PEDs,
Mhm.
without losing muscle. And even when I'm dieting, like, I work with I'd say most of my coaching clients are just regular people. Half of my clients are regular people just trying to get in shape. And, like, let's say if I have somebody that's trying to lose 100 pounds,
Mhm.
we break it up into chunks.
Okay.
I'll do 16 weeks, and then give them like a 5 to 6 week diet break, and then we hit another 16 weeks, and we'll set a goal of like maybe 25 pounds.
So like
And
a step down kind of approach.
yeah, and and you'll see it. I mean, you said you'd lost a bunch of weight. After
I
a
did.
while, there's only so low you can take the calories, and only so much cardio you can do, and the metabolism just starts to fight back after a while.
Yeah, in my
Uh,
case, the only thing that made it possible was that I started strength training at the
yeah,
same time. That's
yep,
the only way that it worked, and I had plateaus for sure. So,
yeah. So I like to program in every 12 to 16 weeks, and if anything, just psychological. I'll put people back on a slight surplus, or maybe net neutral, or see if I can get their metabolism back up a little bit. I'll pull the cardio back down, and then we'll hit it again for another 12 to 16 weeks. And I find that keeps, if we do that over time, it keeps people from having that, they call it the biggest loser effect from that show. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that study they did on the post follow up from the show, like how much metabolic damage most of those people had.
I
It was
haven't
just
actually. So,
it's just horrendous. Like, most
okay,
of these people had like horrible regain of weight. They
like a
were
bounce
not.
back after they
Oh,
left.
worse. And
Okay,
they did measurements on their BMR, like how their BMR completely changed for the worse after
right,
losing. That rapid weight loss is horrendous for you.
right.
And I
you
just,
start paring down muscle even, and your metabolism starts adjusting down, right? Because you're starving.
yeah, it's an adaptation process. Your body doesn't want to starve, and you lose muscle tissue as you go. So I think, like, just for like a regular person, this is where bodybuilding and some of the bodybuilders have perfected the art of losing fat without losing muscle.
Right.
They
Because
have
it's what
protect,
you want. Right.
so just like for a regular person running a just slightly over TRT dose, or maybe like something like TRT with a little bit of growth hormone, just something anti-catabolic. Maybe use a GLP-1 in there, or um, and like just like maybe like a anabolic or a low dose anabolic like Masteron or Primable, and you're going to preserve your muscle mass and maybe even build some muscle if you've never used anabolics before, while you lose weight and get healthier. And a lot of times, what I've seen is blood markers will improve uh,
Okay.
on
Because
people
they
like
were in
that
bad shape, and all of a
because they
sudden
were
you're
in bad
increasing
shape. Yep.
muscle creation, which is improving your metabolism, and again a chain
Yeah, we're
reaction, if you
improving
will.
metabolic health as we go.
Yeah. Right.
And I typically run carb cycling diets with people too, unless they're severely obese or have severe insulin resistance, just to help. Just in summary, carb cycling diet. It's calorie cycling. We'll take one day a week where we push the calories higher, potentially into a surplus to help people get for metabolic adaptation to prevent that. Also replenish glycogen, also to just for a mental break. If you only have to be in a deficit for 6 days,
Right.
it
You have
make
a day that you can kind of level set. Is that day usually a day you would train heavy, or a day that you're recovering?
I usually use it on a training day, like a higher energy output day, like a leg training day. I'll do that, and usually with what I'll do is just put more carbohydrates in the diet. It's going to help with hormone signaling. It's going to with leptin and ghrelin. It's going to help balance those back out. Although GLP-1 would help with that. Um, it also just psychologically, you also have glycogen replenishment as well. And really, if you as you add muscle, you can actually go into a caloric surplus on that day and not gain body fat, because how your body partitions those nutrients. So you're going to be, if you keep the fats low and push the carbohydrates up, you're going to have additional glycogen synthesis on that day, not fat gain. Is
Okay. Oh,
what
that's
I've
good to
seen.
know.
And
I'm taking
also,
that.
yeah, no, you got to keep the fats low. Um, but it also seems to spike the thyroid too. So a lot of times, like, you'll see after people diet for a long time, their thyroid hormones will come down. So there's the metabolic adaptation there. You'll see a lot of times, especially women. Women seem to be hypersensitive to that. You'll see women that have dieted hard and they end up having permanent damage to their thyroid, or the
Interesting.
thyroid
Okay.
just permanently downregulates. It doesn't seem to be as bad in men.
Interesting. Well, we're different. I mean, than the hormonal complexity in women, from my understanding,
Oh,
it's far more than us. Like we're
yeah,
less.
I am don't proclaim to be an expert in women's hormone health, but it is. I mean, you got to balance progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. I mean, there's a, a prolactin. There's a bunch of stuff that's in there that needs to be leveled out and dialed in very specifically. And then the range of which the hormones need to be in is much smaller than what men are. Same thing with food. I mean, uh, we established that if you need to lose a pound of fat, that would be a 500 calorie a day deficit. I mean, but if you have a woman that already has a 1600 calorie BMR, how low are you going to
Where's
take the
your
calories?
yeah? You have no space, no
Right. Whereas
bandwidth.
me, like, my BMR is around 4,000 calories.
Wow.
I can be in 1,000 calorie deficit and still eat 3,000 calories.
Right. And you still feel satisfied, full. It's
Right.
not going to affect your mood or hormonal balance or anything like that. Gotcha. Wow. So speaking of kind of changing the subject, but for people who may be, again, interested and new to this, they're getting fit. What are your thoughts on two things? Coaching, how important and valid it is, because everyone's going to want to go online and buy a program and follow that? Any advice that you can give to like the general population?
You can certainly do this on your own if you're disciplined.
Mhm.
I lost my initial weight on my own, but I've always had a coach for the most part. I think the biggest thing that a coach brings, at least for me, I still work with a coach. I know what I'm
Okay.
doing.
Even now that you've done
Yeah,
this
even now.
multiple times for years.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the reason I do work with a coach, and I've always in business, I've always had paid for mentors, is it's really difficult to be objective about yourself.
Uh, okay.
You
So
know
you get
what
that input and that feedback.
what you see in the mirror is not often what is reality. What your emotions get wrapped up in things, especially like on contest prep. When you're dieting, you're fatigued. You may think you need food when you don't. You may think you're getting smaller when you're not. I
Mm.
mean, diet. A lot of times, dieting plays mind tricks. I also the accountability, knowing that you have a check-in coming in 3 or 4 or 5 days, and really like the amount of money that you spend on coaching. I do the math on it. It's $10 a day. Like is what I essentially is what I charge for coaching. People spend more than that on energy drinks.
Yeah. In a day. Starbucks.
Yeah, Starbucks. I
Easy
mean, a
enough.
latte at Starbucks is $7, man. Just don't go to Starbucks and hire a coach.
Yeah.
And especially, it's kind of the muddy waters with the PED stuff, but it's not, people are like, you're not a doctor. And I'm like, I coach doctors, right?
It is your
I have,
field.
right, because they don't get taught this stuff in medical school. It's not that they don't understand the endocrine system, but this is shit. This is like black magic stuff.
And then there's the fact that there is a body of knowledge that has been built throughout years by the bodybuilding community, which perhaps, I've always heard people say like, well, scientifically that doesn't make sense, but in application we see it work over and over and over. So how do you explain that,
I mean, a lot of it, the science has caught up with the bodybuilding community now.
Mhm.
A lot of the stuff that was just anecdote before, we now have studies that are validating some of this stuff. They used to say that steroids didn't grow muscle. That's what they said back in the 60s, right?
Well, the
Clearly,
advertisements, right? You would
clearly,
see.
clearly it does,
Right, right,
right? They like even up into the 80s, doctors would say that testosterone didn't grow muscle.
right. And here
Like,
we are.
yeah,
We're
yeah. I
like,
mean, like, come on, man. Um, so that was just not true, right? So there's been a lot of stuff like with training. There've been a lot of studies done on training. A lot of the stuff on nutrition now has caught back up. So I think a lot of there is some really dumb bro mythy stuff that has been um, perpetuated in the bodybuilding community. That hopefully is being corrected now. I mean, there's just been some stupid stuff, but
well, can you share some examples? So, again, for people to be on if nothing else, on the lookout.
yeah, I mean, I constantly see things changing, like hormone management. Like it used to be that estrogen was evil. You wanted to bury your estrogen as low as possible, and then for a while it was like let your estrogen run high. And lo and behold, it seems like the logical reasoning, the best thing is just to keep it in range, right? It's common fucking sense at the end of the day, right? Some of the dosing protocols the guys came up with just made no sense whatsoever. Some of the drugs guys would take, they would take ancillary drugs for preventing side effects that they may have from something that they're taking, taking drugs for the side effects for the drugs that they're taking. Maybe just don't take that one if you get a side effect
Yeah,
from it, right?
maybe. Like lowest effective dose thing is something that kind of gets lost sometimes in the. I guess there's also that a little bit of a mad scientist thing that happens when you have all these different compounds and different things that you can go down that rabbit hole real quick.
Yeah, and there's real people, real scientists that have gotten into the bodybuilding community now, and we didn't have that before. And the internet has kind of united all these people, couple of the guys I collaborate with, are PhDs and very, very smart guys. And 20 years ago, before we had social media, I would have never met these guys.
Right.
You
I
know,
would never have found you or the information that I could find now. Like never, unless I would go to a gym, find that guru, that person that, and again, it's a single point of contact.
and a
Whereas
lot of time that
now,
guy was wrong.
and you're right. If it was I mean, we're roughly the same age, so we're talking like late '80s,
Oh
'90s.
yeah, no,
I
yeah, I remember.
I think things were a lot different if I recall correctly.
No, I
Even with that,
remember. I remember, like in the '90s, like when I first started dabbling into stuff, and it was like you got to make friends with the big guy in the gym, and then eventually he'll divulge his secrets,
yeah.
his bag of tricks to you once you became his friend and he could trust you.
This is like the
Yeah,
Sorcerer's Apprentice. Like, we were talking about Dungeons and Dragons before. This is
yeah,
like finding the wizard, that'll teach you.
yeah. Finding the wizard, and half the time he was wrong anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. Half the time he didn't know as much as you thought.
no, he was just making shit up as he go, or just repeating stuff that he'd heard from other people. But now we have access to, even like before, like PubMed and things like that. We have access to tons of research. AI, with AI, I use AI frequently to help me with research when I look at stuff. So you can grab research studies and stuff that you couldn't have. You would have to go to a medical library 20 years ago.
Right. And then figure out everything by yourself. And how long does it take you to search through that material, let alone collate it, summarize it, come out with your findings?
I mean, we are in the
Yeah.
golden age of information.
Yeah.
My background is in IT.
Okay.
That's
Likewise. So we share that. What
yeah.
side of IT, just out of curiosity?
I studied computer science and I data analytics in college, and then I ended up running an information security company
Okay.
and help desk. So I mostly did security consulting.
Gotcha. I came from the UI UX design side because I was going to draw comic books. Just so you know, I have an art degree. So, and that turned
I
into, yeah, interfaces and then Flash there was Flash a long time ago.
Yeah, I
And
have a
yeah,
degree in music initially, and then I went back and got a comp sci degree afterwards.
nice.
Yeah,
Hey,
so
we got to pay the bills, right?
yeah, I
You
found
know,
out there was no jobs for tuba players, so I had to do something.
Gotcha. So the irony for me was I finally, for about a month, had the dream job as a colorist in New York for DC.
Well, that's
Started the
awesome.
conversation, but there was this new thing called the internet that somebody had to learn. So I learned HTML and coding and never saw a comic book ever again. It's
Well,
just the
probably
way it happens,
probably made more money that way.
Well, it's a whole other side career. It was like a side quest turned into a main quest. Okay, and
Yeah,
I'm happy with it.
I kind of just stumbled into the whole IT thing. I was just like, yeah, I like computers.
Yeah,
Um,
you have to
I'm
talk
gonna,
to people.
yeah, I don't have to talk to people. Yeah, most people that go into IT are introverts. Yeah.
So let me ask you something more out of curiosity, just while we're talking. So if you could go back and talk to your younger self, and you're about to start bodybuilding, this journey that you've been on for a while, what advice would you give you? Like, what would you change, if anything?
Most of it's just patience. I
Okay.
was very impatient when I was younger, and I gave up on things too easily. This is even with PEDs. And people always think PEDs are going to be the shortcut. You when you start PEDs, there's this initial honeymoon period of your first cycle. You have these crazy gains, and then you never have that again. It's
Right,
just
right.
right. So it's bodybuilding and adding the amount of muscle tissue that it takes to be a professional bodybuilder just takes time.
Right.
There's you can
There's no way
shortcut it
around
a
it.
lot. There's just no way around it. I mean, if you need, I was 180 pounds when I graduated college. I had to put on 70 pounds of muscle to be able
Compete to get on stage.
to be able to earn a pro card. And
Wow.
you
Huh.
you talk about that. I mean, you think about it. I mean, that's a 10-year project.
Right. Right. How
And
many people finish 10-year projects of any kind?
very few. I mean, it's a
Right.
PhD.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. Exactly. With physical effort, lots of it.
Yeah, I mean, being a musician, there was I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that came up with the 10,000 hours to perfection thing. But he
Yes.
said, it takes about 10,000 hours of repetition at a given craft to become, as an artist, it's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of repetition to
Absolutely.
get good out of it. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. But I had a sort of a renaissance later on in life and went back to it and then got my pro card later on. I wish I had been more patient with it when I was younger.
Hmm.
I wish I'd been a little more focused with it when I was younger and had given it my all my attention, and I think I could have done pretty well with it when I was younger. I sacrificed a lot of those early years just being a 20-year-old dude.
Youth is wasted on the young, right?
Right, I would have fits and starts. I would do it for a while, and I'd get bored with it. My attention would go elsewhere. Usually it was a girl, or a video game, or some business venture, and I just like just staying focused, staying consistent, staying patient. I would give up, at times, like, this isn't working. There's that's the thing. Like when you do these things, the analogy, I forget who said it, but there was an analogy about climbing Mount Everest. You do it one step at a time, and you don't climb Mount Everest for the view at the top. It's the
Good point.
journey.
It's the journey.
It's the journey,
Right.
right? So, and I wish I had embraced that, been a little more zen about things when I was younger, been a little more patient, been a little more persistent with things. It's other than that, and I think sometimes you have to learn the mistakes and the trips, on the way up the mountain. Those are just part of the learning process. But I wish I had continued the journey.
Gotcha.
Because I'd stopped, and gave up like halfway up the mountain and turned back and came back down, and then I had to start from the bottom again when I was 40 years old.
Right. I was gonna say you mentioned that gap in the
Yeah.
30s, right? Where
And it's not like my 30s were wasted. I took those years and focused on family and business.
right. No,
So,
you were CEO. I mean,
right,
it's not
right.
like you weren't just playing video games.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bit of ADHD when it comes to things. I'll venture off onto something else. Like same thing with music. Like I kind of just got tired of music, the grind of it, and I'm sort of an all in or all out kind of guy. If I'm all in on something, if I want to do something, I'm all in. If I lose interest in it, I'm checking out.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You got more things to do, so and there's only so much time. Like you said, we're both what into starting the third act,
Yeah,
in our lives, so
yep.
to speak. So yeah.
But I would say for a young person, I would say that would be the big thing I would
Stick with it,
impart.
be patient.
Whatever your chosen craft is, it doesn't have to be bodybuilding. If you want to be the best artist, stick to it. Continue to grind, continue to get better. Don't give up. You're gonna get rejected. You're gonna have failures. You're going to have obstacles that are going to get in the way. But if you really love it and you're passionate about it, just stay patient. Ride through the bumps. Pick yourself back up and keep going.
Yeah, and there will be setbacks, right? Especially in any endeavor that takes, 8, 10, 15 years, lifelong, there's gonna be setbacks,
Well, I
and you gotta
know
handle those.
we talked about games a little bit, but I mean, life is the
Right.
ultimate RPG.
Yeah, yeah. You get to play this character all the way through, right?
Yep. And there are choices and there are consequences for those choices. There's rewards for choices. And I just like, that's another thing. Like, I've always lived my life to the fullest, I think. Sometimes I didn't make the right choices, but, another thing I'd like to impart on people that are younger is just to make the most of it. Like, don't spend your life on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah, go out, see things and do things, right?
Do things, find a passion, find a love, have experiences. You're gonna fuck up.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna
it's
trip.
inevitable.
Yeah,
It's
there's
inevitable.
gonna be setbacks. There's going to be, just live. It's life.
Absolutely.
Life is meant to be lived.
That's like the best advice that I think we can impart on any of the young kids. Absolutely. Be brave, be bold, do the thing.
Even guys our age. I see a lot of guys. A lot of guys I know, like friends from when I was younger, have kind of given up. They just,
Oh, like fall into like this is all there is and this is the routine.
yeah,
Kind of a
yeah. They've
yeah.
given up on their health. They've given up on their advancing themselves. They've given up. Like, I don't know. I feel like I feel like I'm still progressing in my 50s
Yeah.
in
As
life.
long as you draw breath, I think and progression doesn't have to be just physical, even though we can,
No, emotional,
which
mental, business.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm in the best shape of my life. I never would have thought. I'll show you pictures later after the show because your
yeah, I'd love
reaction
to
is
see.
not something you want on screen. But anyway, yeah, it's why just keep swimming on. Be the shark. Keep moving. You can
Yep,
stop when you're dead.
keep moving. It's life is a gift.
Yeah, for real, for real. That's amazing. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for this. This has been like way more than I even expected. This has been bodybuilding, life philosophy, aging with grace,
RPGs.
everything. RPGs, there is that. There is that too. Absolutely. Nerdery. I almost wore a Pantera t-shirt because I know you have a love for heavy metal music too.
Yeah, I love Pantera. Yep.
So yeah. Almost did that too. I actually saw them last year for the second time. The first time was in Puerto Rico with the original lineup in the
Yeah,
90s.
I've
And
seen the
that was
original
amazing.
lineup like 4 or 5 times. I didn't
And
go for the reunion tour, although I do like Zach Wild.
Zach is amazing. Let me tell you, it's amazing how. And if they ever do it again or still do it, I'm not sure if that tour's going or it'll go again. Please go enjoy it because he does a great balancing act of paying homage to the material, but still being Zach,
Yep.
which is hard. It's
I mean,
hard,
he's one of the best guitar players in the world.
no doubt, no doubt whatsoever, no doubt. Well, with that, Paul, thank you for your time. You've been most gracious with sharing your knowledge and your insight. And to our audience, I'll have all of Paul's information here in the show notes. I believe you still coach, right? People can
Yeah, I
still reach
still
out for
coach.
coaching and so
Yep.
forth. And check out his channel if you're interested in any of the topics we discussed today. He has a vast library of videos that will address any question you may have regarding this. So
Tons of free information. That is awesome.
absolutely, and it is awesome for real. Like I've used it myself. So again, Paul, thank you so much, and to the
Thank
audience,
you.
click like, subscribe, do all the things, and remember: assess, adapt, overcome, get better. Thank you, everyone.